Okay, in the last video, we wrote out the entire melody to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to use this bass clef here. We're going to add a bass line to it. If we wanted to, we could make all of these actually chords, but just for the sake of simplicity and time, we're going to keep it a little simpler. We're just going to do one-note bass lines, or one note at a time bass lines underneath the melody that we have. So we have quarter notes mostly in our melody, and in the bass clef we have a whole bunch of quarter rests here. But for the most part, for this bass line, we're actually going to use half notes or whole notes. So for this first measure, we're actually going to go ahead and make sure you click on that first rest there, click on a whole note, and we're going to enter a whole note in this measure. So we are in C major, and our first note is C, and the other notes in this measure are G's, which if we know our C chord, that chord includes C, E, and G. C is the chord that would go underneath this, but we're just going to put a C, a single C, instead of a full chord for that first measure. Now, thinking to the functions of the chords that we discussed last week, we had tonic function, predominant function, and dominant function. So we're actually going to show a little example of this right here. Now, in C major, if you remember last week, there were three different chords that had predominant function. One was the D minor chord, one was the F major chord, and one was the A minor chord. Now, if you look back to last week's notes or watch those videos again, which I would not expect you to do right now, we saw that the note A was actually in all three of those predominant chords. So technically, we could choose either D minor, F major, or A minor to put underneath these A's. Typically, this song will have an F major chord in it, so we're just going to stick with what we usually see and put that here. So I'm just going to put an F. Now I have switched to a half note up here. I'm going to click on the F line here for half note F, and then we switch to a G. Now, again, we have a couple options here. G fits both the C chord, as we see here, C, E, G, but it also fits the G chord, which is the dominant motion. I'm actually going to go ahead and we're going to take from this F, we're going to step up to a G. We're going to go ahead with dominant rather than tonic function right now. And then we have F, F, E, E, D, D, C. So what I'm actually going to do here is we're going to remember that the dominant chord, we usually have a dominant seventh. G is the dominant note, and 7 steps above G, it's actually F. Right here, this F is lower, but if we go from G and count upward, we get F. Quick tip, if you click on this sign right here, this brings up a keyboard we can look at. Just real quick for showing you, like I just said, if we start on G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to hide this. F is the 7th note of G. We're going to put another G here, and we're actually going to turn this into a whole note. We're going to put a G in the bass line of this measure to make this a G7 chord, and then in the following measure after that, we're going to switch. We're going to do yet another G, and then bring that down to a C to match the C we have in the beginning. So the two parts we have here sound like this together. That's what we have so far. We have a tonic action here. This F here is predominant. Then we have a whole lot of dominant function, and it resolves down to tonic. We started home, left home, started coming on our way back, and we arrived back home. Now, The next four measures are actually going to be very simple as far as the bass line goes. This isn't going to be the most interesting sound ever, but actually all of these notes, or all these measures, we can just put G whole notes in our bass clef. Let me play these next four measures for you. The G is going to get a little boring, but it's always going to make sense with the melody. I'm sorry, that's not where it should be starting. It should be starting here. And then to go ahead and save some time, because I am doing too much talking like always, I'm going to do the same thing with the bass line here that we did with the melody at the beginning. I'm going to click and drag. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there. I just hit Control and Z to undo. I'm going to click and drag these four measures. Hit Control and C to copy. Come down to where our bass clef has gone blank again. Control V will tell it to paste. And we have the same exact thing as the beginning. The last thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to click on this last G before the C. And in my opinion, endings of songs sound better when the last notes go from low to high. So I'm just going to hit the down arrow until I get to this line here. The bottom line of the bass clef staff is G. So we still have a G here, but I just feel that going from this low G up to C is going to sound better. I'm going to go ahead back to the beginning and play the whole song, melody and bass line. Yeah, in my opinion, this last low G to C just sounds better. You might agree, you might not agree. Either way, that's fine with me. But that is it for this video. Come back for the next video, and we're going to transpose this and find out why we're talking about transposition.